Senator Ted Cruz, who hit or miss, he does a really good job at finding information, is on the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. In the second clip you're actually going to see, but you're going to see a little bit of it in the first clip, he's having an exchange with Franklin McIntosh, who is the Deputy Chief Operating Officer of the FAA. This is not This is somebody who, in all honesty, sounds like a very intelligent individual. He's been in this role since 2023, so he came in under the Biden administration, and they've kept him on so far. The exchange between Ted Cruz and McIntosh is actually really good. It's not people yelling at each other or anything like that. It's valid questions getting asked and valid answers coming out of these. Plus, McIntosh even asked his own question. He says, the next question you should ask is this. And Ted Cruz, you'll see it, what Ted Cruz's response is. What this all is all about is the fact that there were problems at the DC airport in which there is a hotline between the DoD and the airport that they found out after the crash that was not working. This hotline, bad thing. But you're going to hear all about some of the FAA problems. And Ted Cruz is asking valid questions. McIntosh is giving valid answers. So, yeah, this is scary on so many levels. Also, I want to thank everybody for 400 subscribers to my channel. I am amazed at that so far. I'm hoping that I will grow far beyond that, but I am thankful for who is subscribed. So let's get into this whole FAA thing. The first clip is a local news in DC, and the second is the full conversation between Cruz and McIntosh, so that you get a lot better idea of what's going on.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
A new update tonight concerning your safety as you fly in and out of Reagan National Airport. It was revealed today that a key communication link between the Pentagon and the air traffic control tower at Reagan National hasn't worked in years. News 4 transportation reporter Adam Tuss has been following that story all day. He joins us live from Reagan National. Adam, what more do we know about this seems like unraveling story?
Yeah, it's troubling, Erica and Sean, for sure. And all of this was uncovered during a hearing today, a Senate hearing where a top FAA official was being questioned. And really all of this, guys, is painting a troubling picture of the relationship between the FAA and the DoD.
In the months since the January midair disaster at Reagan National Airport that killed 67 people, we've learned that communication between the control tower at the airport and the nearby Pentagon, which frequently flies Black Hawk helicopters, has been spotty. At times, planes and helicopters have continued to get too close to one another. And now, more confirmation about less than perfect communication between the two agencies. Listen to this exchange between Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Franklin McIntosh, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer of Air Traffic Control at the FAA.
Is it true that the hotline, the direct line between the Pentagon Air Traffic Control and the DCA tower, has been inoperable since March of 2022?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Who maintains that hotline?
I believe the DoD maintains that hotline, but I think the next question would be, why were we not aware of it and insist upon it being fixed?
McIntosh did later say that landlines still exist between the Pentagon and DCA control tower to make phone calls if needed. It's not clear if this inoperable hotline would have prevented or helped during January's midair disaster, but the FAA is now insisting that the hotline be fixed before more Black Hawk helicopters can fly out of the Pentagon. I recently asked U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy about his relationship with the DoD, if he's frustrated. Here's what he said.
Frustrated. I want to get us to a good place where we all feel like the airspace is safe and how we're using it, and we can do that in partnership, and that's why those conversations are taking place.
Safer skies, the goal for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, as far as that hotline between the Pentagon and the air traffic control tower here at Reagan National Airport, this FAA official is now saying that he expects the DoD will expedite getting that hotline back connected. Again, something that hasn't worked in years, so that the Pentagon can once again start flying those Black Hawk helicopters. Guys, back to you.
Adam Tuss live for us this afternoon. Adam, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to start with questions for Mr. McIntosh. On April 25th, for the first time since the January 28 mid-air collision, the Army resumed flying in the National Capital Region. Less than a week later, Air Traffic Control had to command 2 commercial aircraft on final approach to abort their landing at DCA due to an Army Black Hawk on an apparent training mission at the Pentagon having wandered far too close to the commercial aircraft flight path. Shortly thereafter, and just 10 days after having resumed limited flight in the National Capital Region, the Army Aviation Brigade suspended operations in the D.C. area. Mr. McIntosh, I had been told that prior to the Army Aviation Brigade's decision to suspend operations on May 5th, the FAA was preparing to suspend the letter of agreement between the Army and the FAA that gives the Army the ability to operate the D.C. airspace without having to first ask for FAA clearance for each flight. Was the FAA prepared to suspend the letter of agreement? And if so, what was concerning enough to justify such a decision?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator Cruz. Like yourself, we were extremely troubled by the incident that occurred, especially in light of DCA and the events that led up to the accident. To be quite honest with you, we were ready to deploy any option available that we could use or had that we felt was necessary to bring safety measures and better behaviors from the DoD in this instance. To answer your question, we were ready to do any option available to include what you just spoke to, which was removing the ability to fly.
So just to be clear, does that mean the FAA did actually draft an order suspending the Army's ability to fly in the D.C. area?
I'm not 100% aware if we drafted an order, sir, but we did have discussions if that was an option that we wanted to pursue. I do know that the DoD came back and suspended operations on their own based on that event. So we're still working with DoD to improve that process.
Well, I commend your vigilance in protecting the flying public, particularly in and around DCA, given the horrific accident that occurred earlier this year. Is it true that the hotline, the direct line between the Pentagon Air Traffic Control and the DCA tower, has been inoperable since March of 2022?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Who maintains that hotline?
I believe the DoD maintains that hotline, but I think the next question would be, why were we not aware of it and insist upon it being fixed? And
I didn't have that written down, but it's a good one.
Well, so we take safety responsibilities extremely seriously in the FAA, and those were the questions we were asking. And we were not aware, but we became aware after that event. And now that we became aware of that event, we're insisting upon that line to be fixed before we resume any operations out of the Pentagon.
Do you have a timeline for when that line will be operational?
To be honest with you, Senator, I would expect the DoD to expedite that timeline so they can begin their operations.
And while Army flights were ongoing, if the hotline was not operational, how did controllers communicate?
That's a great question, Senator. We still have landline abilities. We can make phone calls from the helipad to the operation where the supervisor or even the controller in charge can answer. So we're aware of the activity. And if there was a departure clearance needed, we'd be able to relay it via that mechanism.
Is it also true that the air traffic control positions for local traffic and helicopters were combined early, just as they were on the day of the mid-air collision?
Yes, sir, it was.
Let me say the developments at DCA and its airspace are extremely concerning. And together with Senators Cantwell, Duckworth, and Moran, this committee remains laser focused on monitoring a safe return to operations at DCA and making sure all users in the airspace are operating responsibly. Let's turn to Newark. Newark International Airport has been beset by delays after the radar system malfunctioned, leaving controllers unable to see or communicate with aircraft in their sector for approximately 90 seconds. What broke down, and how did the system become this deteriorated in the first place?
Thank you, Senator. To answer your question, we were obviously very concerned about the disruptions that occurred in Newark airspace as well for the 90 seconds that it occurred. When we did our investigation, what we found out was our telecommunication provider that provides network lines into that area. There's two lines, Senator, that provide data and transmission feeds. The primary line that came in failed. We have a secondary redundant line that provides the radar transmissions and our voice capabilities, and that redundant line is supposed to assume that load. And it's supposed to be instantaneous, where if we were to have a fiber cut of a line or a copper cut of a line, something along those regards, then that redundant line is supposed to kick in. When we lost that first line, the second line did not kick in like it was designed to do. That's what caused the disruption. The disruption was for 90 seconds. The aircraft, I'm an air traffic controller by trade, so I'm just going to talk like an air traffic controller if that's okay. Air traffic controllers provide positive separation between aircraft. That is what we do. And what I mean by that is we never point aircraft head on at the same altitude. We ensure we have appropriate levels of separation. In the event that we have something like a Nordo aircraft that has a stuck mic that could jam up the frequencies, or if we have something like that. So we didn't have a loss of separation based on some of our procedures that we have installed and the techniques that we use as controllers. I do want to highlight that. But 90 seconds is a long time for an air traffic controller. So although we have contingencies in place that we use to make sure that we keep aircraft safe, it is a long disruption for a radar screen to go blank or not to be able to talk to aircraft. So that was something that we wanted to take a look at, and we have put in corrective measures since that happened to ensure that those redundancies are better for that airspace. We have this system across the United States feeding radar data like this, where we have a line and a redundant line, and we haven't had a failure like this to this degree in my memory. So we had to put together, along with the local vendor that was responsible for the telecommunications, to provide a more resistant or a better contingency to ensure that if it ever happened again, that we feel good about those processes. We were able to implement a new contingency, and we are working with a telco provider, along with Secretary Duffy's leadership, to actually bring in a third line of redundancy into that area to prevent this from happening again.
So when the system was down, what was the degree of danger the flying public faced?
The real danger of the flying public would be is if our techniques weren't good, if our controllers didn't put aircraft on positive vectors, if we couldn't quick look or talk to an aircraft via another way, because we have the ability to go via emergency frequencies. We can use PET 2000s that are at our disposal at some of our remote towers. If all those fail at the same time, then we would have to assure that the aircraft follow what they're supposed to do, which is lost comm procedures, where they could go into holding or they could go back to the return frequencies. But if all those start failing all at one time, then all of a sudden the danger that the flying public is then all of a sudden you're going to have to rely on the pilots to do what they do, which is rely on their TCAS systems on board, which is their traffic collision systems.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is during those 90 seconds, was there a significantly heightened danger to the flying public?
I don't believe there was a heightened significant danger to the flying public. But with that being said, from where I sit, we want to remove all risk to the flying public. And that is what's concerning to me, is how do we remove any bit of that risk? And we need to make sure our contingencies are better placed.
You heard all of that. McIntosh seems to have a valid grasp on what's going on. And Ted Cruz is not attacking anybody. He's trying to find real answers. Now, there were other people during this hearing that were screaming all kinds of political stuff, and they're trying to blame Trump. Ted Cruz could have quite literally have blamed Biden during this hearing because that hotline was down since 2022. He didn't. Instead, he's trying to find the answers. And he is finding the answers. He's doing his job. And he's finding, hey, there's a problem that's been going on that has been found. Why has it not been fixed? And also he's finding out about, hey, there's another problem. This one was up in Newark. What went on and what's the solution? That was just an amazing thing of, hey, instead of politics getting involved, we actually get to hear some answers. You can see that Frank McIntosh is someone they need to keep at the FAA because, he actually seems to know what he's doing. And he is trying to get these things taken care of. This is how the government should work. But instead, you have a whole bunch of people screaming and yelling and not doing anything. I think we need to keep up McIntosh and get rid of the rest of them, in my opinion. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So, folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.